Nobody likes the idea of being forgotten. There's a funny story in my wife's family where my father-in-law had his other daughter, Lena, with him, and they went for a drive to go visit some friends. And when he got there, he actually forgot Lena in the car. He went inside the house and he had coffee and he sat there for a while. And after about an hour, he remembered that he'd had his daughter with him, and she was only 3 or 4 at the time. And he went out to get her, and it was like a 25, 30-degree day and super hot, but she was sitting in the car and she was totally fine, and they all laughed about it and thought it was funny. And they've told that story multiple times, and thankfully Lena's not scarred by this story or anything. But it really, as I heard that story told a few times, I got thinking, what if I forget one of my kids? My wife and I have 4 kids, and it would be easy to forget one of them. They're pretty rambunctious at times. Last summer we took them to New York City, and while we were there, we went to Times Square, and I remember running through Times Square, and it's chaotic, like just people everywhere. And I don't know how many times my wife and I counted to 4 to make sure that we had all our children. And thankfully, we didn't forget any of them. But I've thought about this a lot in my life. What's it like to be forgotten? I think that's a fear that a lot of us struggle with. We get to the end of our lives, and we're afraid that maybe our kids will forget about us, or our friends will forget about us, or that we'll just be forgotten. I think that's a fear that a lot of people struggle with throughout their lives. Jesus, when he died between 2 men who were both thieves. One of them was cursing him and cursed him until his last breath. But the other thief, he said something to Jesus that I think echoes how a lot of us feel. He said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." This thief on the cross beside Jesus, he realized that he was dying beside the Messiah, the one that had come to save the whole world. And he voiced one of his biggest fears to Jesus in that moment. "Jesus, please remember me. Don't forget me." And the comforting words of Jesus were, "Yes, today you will be with me in paradise." And I think that those are some of the most comforting words. And I want to share that with you today, that you are not forgotten. God does remember you. But one of the things that I've found surprising about Scripture as I've studied through it is that God, over and over in Scripture, says to us, "Remember me." When Moses was talking to the Israelites just before they were about to enter the Promised Land, he said to them multiple times in the book of Deuteronomy, "Don't forget the God who saved you. Don't forget the God who did all of these great things for you." And so as I was wrestling through this, thinking about being forgotten and memory and all this, I got to this thought where I was thinking, God, don't forget me. And it was like I heard him saying back to me, "Nathan, don't forget me." And I want to encourage you with that today. Don't forget your Creator. Don't forget the God who loves you and remembers you. And the ways that we forget God are just living our lives for ourselves, living in selfishness, living in a way that forgets God, our Creator. And I want to encourage you today to live in a way that shows that you remember God, that you love him and are pursuing him with all of your heart.